Like that's worse than a cold crowd. That's a comatose crowd. And I was telling her, I was like, I know. I go, that's what it feels like when you're up there. That like that's an exaggerated look, but it really is what it feels like when you have a cold crowd. It feels like you are waking up, like you're the wake up call. Hello, 8 o'clock show. This is your wake up call. Are you ready to perform as an audience? No, snooze.
Greetings, everyone! Come on in and have a seat up front for the Funny Muscle Podcast. If you're here, then you're looking to learn how to create laughs like a pro. So please help me welcome to the stage your co-host to help you do that, economics professor and open micer Chris Stifler and comedian turned author Mike Lucas.
So is the article written in such a way that you're the comic, or is it also advice for the MCs?
Well, you're both, and because I think that as you know, whoever's the first comic, that's what you're really talking about. So the first comic, the first one on the show on the bill is it sometimes the MC, sometimes the opener, sometimes you're the middle. I've done two-man shows or two-person shows where the middle act is also the MC and opener. They used to have there's a lot of tours when I was starting down in Florida. There was and also up in with Tom Sobel in the Midwest. There were these rooms that a booker would book the weekend room, and then they would have a series of one-nighters that led up to that weekend room. And so the way that the booker would operate typically to make money is they would have the one-nighters. They would sort of overcharge the one-nighters to have those comics come in, and they would collect that money, and then they would use that, pull that money together, and pay the comic for the full week out of all the money totaled. And then typically that would be more than what they so the bar in Sarasota might pay the booker $300 for my act, but I got paid $50 because I'm only the middle act in that thing. But basically that's how they were running their deal to make money booking comics, and then their weekend rooms would have 3 or 4 extra one-nighters with them, so you would make more money during the course of the week. So you would sometimes be in a two-person show at a bar where the whole room is sort of facing the other way, and then you have to get their attention to sort of say this show is starting and I'm the first comedian and I'm also the MC. So it can be tricky.
It's got to be a lot easier for like people who are actually at a comedy club, right? Who are showed up to see a comic versus even a bar, or maybe like a lot of places do, like breweries do comedy shows around Denver, but like half the audience is there just drinking beer on Saturdays and doesn't even know there's a 4 o'clock comedy show.
Are you ready for the comedy show? Say what? I didn't know that. And then the worst is when you hear, "Oh shit," like oh, there's going to be people trying to make me laugh. Oh, what a pain. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? Where the comedy club, well, they're paying money to come out and to see the thing. It's like people going to a movie theater to see a movie, or people going to a coffee house to drink coffee. It's anytime you serve them something different than what they're expecting from the marketing that got them there, it's always a risk. And so that's when you're at a brewery and you're trying to do, you're at a coffee shop and you're trying to do comedy, or even if you're at a movie theater and there's a comedy show in between the movies. I said in the start of the article says the start of every comedy show is thrilling, gives me goosebumps where my feathers used to be. Because it really is. When you start a show, it doesn't matter where it is. There's something about that that's like something special is about to happen. And that first comedian is the one that has to paint that picture for this crowd. And that's not easy to do if you're a bunch of reluctant beer drinkers have to now turn around in their seat and watch you perform. So that's why when you go up to a cold crowd, there's a bunch of things you can do to really get that crowd's attention and get them to either be on the same page as you or at least start to turn the page to get there. Well, that's why there's a lot of tactics that you can use to get their attention first, and then you can begin to spring your jokes on them. But it's like, I mean, not to use an old tired metaphor, but there is some like a sexual flirtation involved in getting them into the show. I was just talking to another comedian about this, like the Monty Python scene of the meaning of life, where there's a professor who has his wife up there and he's showing this classroom of boys how to make love to her, and they're all bored and yawning, and because it's a class, and he's like, no, you move, what's the next move? And then someone says, touch the clitoris, and he's like, no, must we always jump straight to what about foreplay, what about a kiss on the neck, what about, and the idea is, our first thought is to go straight to the action, and that's what Monty Python's making fun of in there is we do that sexually, but we also do that as an entertainer. We want to hit right to the jokes and get people like applaud breaking our great humor, and sometimes you got to hit them with a kiss on the neck first. You got to nibble on their earlobe, and how do you do that as a first comic? Well, that's what this article at funnymuscle.com is about. It's 10 ways to warm up a cold comedy crowd. So, and there's way more than 10 ways, but I just kind of came up with a list that I thought would be helpful to somebody who's either starting new, and so they're emceeing, or maybe even they're a more experienced middle act who's doing a 2-person show. They have to go up and get the crowd on their side without any foreplay before them. And so the first one, I it's pretty simple, and it's own the room, and owning the room. You do that by what you look like, how you walk, how you approach the stage, because everyone's watching you. They're looking at your posture. They're looking at, and I've given you notes about that when you got to the stage. You first got to the stage. There's a way to grab the microphone off the mic stand. There's a way to greet them, to acknowledge their presence. All of that stuff, and without even saying a word, just your posture, just the way your eye contact, and the way you react to the lights and the sound, all tell me whether or not I should trust you as the MC.
Is that similar to like any presentation? They tell you just like puff your chest up, shoulders back, stand tall, look big, look confident.
And it's real basic, because that's the thing, is we're not talking about how can I be funny to these people. It's how can I get their attention and begin the show when they are ice cold, and I'm trying to get them to come on board to this experience, this journey that we're about to take them on. And that's what we are as a comedy show. If you are the first comedian, you're the first part of that journey. You're setting up the road trip, and then the other comedian or comedians complete the road trip for you. And so you have to be very clear. And the number 2 suggestion I make is to speak clearly and confidently. It's nerve-wracking to be first. It's nerve-wracking to be talking to a cold group of people, but you can't let your voice indicate that. You can't let the way you approach your material and the way you approach your announcements and all that seem as if you're nervous about this weird "we're starting now" moment. Because that's kind of, everybody, we're starting now, can I have your attention please, look, everybody look at me, I'm going to make you laugh. And there's a real like weird sort of purposefulness of that, but it also, if you don't do it right, it can be awkward, and people are going to be like, ew, no. And so if you speak clearly and confidently, if your voice comes across as if this isn't my first comedy rodeo, I've done this before, that's really helpful.
Is that something you practice in a mirror? Like I'm just like going back to our last conversation about even doing your material in front of a mirror and looking at eye contact. Do you practice saying, "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here at X Brewing for our monthly series on comedy"?
If you've never said those words before, yeah, practice them all you can. Just get them out of your mouth a bunch of times, in rehearsal, so that you don't blow it when you're out there. But that's if you're really new. Those are the things that are going to be challenging when you're brand new. When for a long time, because this is how it used to be. I don't know if you know the history of comedy. When it began in the, it's begun, it was Jesters and Kings, but when the comedy club scene began to really peak at the end of the 70s and in all of the 80s, the MC, the first comedian, was a different, the club owners looked at the MC differently than they do now. Back then, sometimes they would get their most experienced comedian to be the host of the show. In fact, their name would be on the bill, and it was a privilege to be on that comedian's show. And they would go up first because they were the most experienced. And so they knew how to get a cold crowd right away, either just by recognition. Hey, it's me. I'm,
Is that how Rodney Dangerfield's show used to work?
He would do a big show in New York. I was thinking of the Bernie Mac in Chicago had a big Sunday show. And if you got on Bernie Mac's show, it was a big deal. And he would go out first and he would just crush. So there's
He was
no
the first.
excuse for like, oh, it's a cold crowd. He didn't care because he's a headliner. He has confidence, and so you have to speak clearly and confidently, like as if you're that guy, as if you're the draw. And if you can begin to tap into that, even if it's not true, you're going to get their attention way quicker.
When did that switch though? Why do we go from Bernie Mac opening up a show to being all about the headliner? And we kind of like stack. I mean, it seems like now the MC is kind of like a more of a newbie who's kind of doing the managerial role and like you're the freshman, go sweep the floor before basketball practice versus the headliner.
Well, it just became a couple of reasons. Money is always the main reason.
Hmm.
And the number of shows that were happening. There was too many shows to be able to focus on having a huge headliner in the beginning, and then we began to focus on the headliner as the draw, because a lot of these satellite rooms that weren't in the main city would pay the headliner comic the most money because they're the 45-minute 50-minute act at the end of the show, and that's why people are showing up. They're the ones that have to endure the dropping of the checks. They're the ones that have to
Hmm.
continue to entertain for almost an hour after they've already seen one or two or three other comedians, and so you pay them the most, and it just became a different type of show. A lot of the shows I'm talking about where there was a headliner as the opener, those are big city shows. That's like the New York City, the Comedy Cellar. They had that big city feel to them, so it was a different energy. And when you go outside the city, it's a lot of it, bowling alleys and pubs, and that on the weekend we turn this into a comedy club, and then there's comedy clubs that are really dedicated to just comedy outside of the city, but they just sort of don't have the money or budget to pay a big name to come in to open, so they have a local person and they give them a thrill, a privilege, like, hey, you did good at the contest, you can be our opener.
Which does seem like a nice way of kind of getting your foot in the door. Like you can't, like you do have a good five, good 10, you might be able to open up for Kevin Nealon in Denver next week because that's the new structure. Was it harder to break through than with the other in the 80s when, Bernie Mac was on top of the card? Like, was there roles for like the newbie as much?
Yeah, back then it was interesting because, boy, if you could have any kind of material at all, like there was comedy was growing and growing, and then there weren't enough comedians to fill that. So that's why you end up getting a lot of weaker acts in the beginning of the show, is because they're just trying to fill slots. And then they realized that budget wise, it worked out better because they could pay their middle act and their headliner more money if they had a local MC that would come in and do it for next to nothing, just for the privilege of the stage time and all that. And and it is a privilege because you're launching your career under the name of Kevin Nealon. Like if I can open for Kevin Nealon, I'm performing to 300 people a show, even if I'm doing 5 or 6 minutes. Well, the Tonight Show set lasts 5 or 6 minutes, so it doesn't matter if it's only 5 or 6 minutes. You can do a very valuable set in that short of time. And so, anytime you can get on a real show, on a weekend show that where
Yeah.
the crowd is a paid crowd, it's a privilege. It's really it shouldn't be taken lightly.
I mean, thinking like an economist who like, the intern model, right? You bring in the college intern and you don't pay them anything, but they get the experience of working with an architect for the summer. Is that the model now in common? We don't need to pay the intern because they're going to benefit from the experience or the billing.
Pretty much, and it's you'll know when you're done doing free work. You'll know when you're done doing free sets because you'll start to get frustrated, and you'll be funny enough where people are like, oh, you should have been doing more time. Like they'll come up after the show and go, what? Oh, wow. Or there'll be comedians that go after you and go, hey, I don't like following you, you're too good, why are you just doing this? And people will tell you when you're ready to move up. That's the funny thing, is everyone wants to move up, but they don't realize that when you're ready to move up, people will tell you, people will insist on it. I don't want to follow that guy, he's too good, he shouldn't be an opener. I'm having to win the crowd back after the first half of my act because that guy's good.
It would seem then because with this new model where the MCs are more of the new people, the interns, it seems like, learning how to MC should be one of the first things you learn as a new comedian then.
Yeah, it's a real skill, and it's the MC is a different job than being a comedian. The MC is the glue of the show. It's the mayonnaise. It's or the, I don't know what it would be. It's the bread, you know, of the sandwich. And so when you're the MC, your job is to get the crowd into it, explain to them what's about to happen, and give them a quick example of what they're about to see, and train them to listen to premises, be misled to where, you know, misdirected to somewhere that, you know, obvious, and then surprised. And then you show them that a couple of times up at the beginning, and they're like, oh, I get what we're doing here, for those that have never been to the club. And for those that have been to a club before, you reinforce why they showed up. Oh, see, this is great. I'm here to watch this person flex their funny muscle over and over and over again. And that first comedian or MC, that's their job, is to sort of train the crowd about what they're about to witness. And you know, it's hard. Like I remember, you know, there was one show I did. One of the most difficult shows I ever did was a road gig outside of Chicago. It was part of a tour that we were doing. And so we pulled into this small town in Illinois. I can't remember what it was, but it's between Iowa and Chicago, like that strip of 90 or whatever. Then you got to go south off of there. And, you know, if you get lost, you have to ask the Amish guy, you know, excuse me, dost thou know where the comedy show is tonight? Ah, no, I don't sin accordingly. But I can tell you where to get fresh cheese. Thank you, Amish man. So this show though, I got into this room, and the opener was a guitar act, and he was the opener MC. You know, this guy, he didn't do a great job. He tried to. I'll explain. Okay, so here's the story. So we get into this room. The first thing we notice is the microphone is one of those microphones that, you know, the principal of your school has at his office or her office, and they make announcements, and it's got the two buttons on it, and you push them and you go, hello everybody, welcome to school, it's a Monday, it's going to be a great week if you're an Eagle. And so it's that microphone with those two buttons duct taped down so that they're always down, and then the whole thing is duct taped to a mic stand. So it's like this real jerry-rigged situation. There's maybe 8 people in this showroom, and then we're in the showroom, and then there's a bar where there's probably 30 people drinking and shooting pool and having fun. So we get the show started. This guy Paul starts the show off, and he's the MC opener. So he's got a guitar though, so he's getting them to sing and clap, and so he's doing his job to get them going. And then what he does is he goes, you know what, this isn't working. Let's go to where the real crowd is. And so he takes the 10 people that are in our showroom, rips the microphone off. No, he doesn't even bring the microphone. He just takes his guitar and leads them like a Pied Piper into the other room and has them sit around the bar. So now there's all these people at the bar that when we walked in, they're like this, and they're turning around like, what the hell's going on? Who's interrupting our conversation? And so it's him playing his songs, his ditties, to close out his act. So he does his final 10 minutes in front. So then he's like, and now welcome your headliner, Mike Lucas. And then I'm in there, no microphone, no lights, standing in front of this bar lined up with people, and then people scattered all over the place. And then that's how I'm supposed to do the show. And so like there's an MC that didn't really quite see the picture of like what he had a guitar, so it was easy for him to capture that kind of a crowd. For me, now I'm having to be like Jim Carrey, or like running around the room, you know, being spontaneous, and or like who am I thinking of, who's all like Robin Williams, you know, where you can like run up to people and do spontaneous bits with them. And I did like a version of that. I mean, I'm not Robin Williams or Jim Carrey, so I didn't have the same success rate as them, but that really put a lot of pressure on that gig in order to you know, bring it home.
Did you adjust your material? Then you had to, right?
Yeah, you do. And those moments, you're there's no subtlety, because you can't, like, I use the microphone a lot. I speak into the mic and then I move away, and then I misdirect, and I like to use volume in and out, and the subtlety of a microphone picking up that is very valuable to me. So that's an example of, if you're an MC, you got to be really aware of like, what am I setting the other guys and the girls up on the bill for? Am I putting I'm like, the first act is almost a sacrificial lamb for the rest of the show, he or she is supposed to say it doesn't matter how I do, I'm going to get this crowd ready to see the rest of the show. It's tough, and then it's tough.
So as an MC, you're more likely to get sacrifice jokes if you can get all 30 people in the bar to be focused, primed, ready to go, ready to get in that rhythm of punchline, laugh, participate, laugh.
Yeah, you do it all. You give them jokes, but you also give them announcements. And like number 4 and number 5, I've got get some quick applause breaks and check in with the back and sides of the room. So like that's some real business oriented stuff. Some applause breaks. Who's from around here? Give it up for the area.
Yeah.
How many people here work at the big factory that is like right down the road or whatever, and well, welcome to the third shift or whatever. You begin to just talk to them and get them to clap as a unit, get them working as a hand clapping unit, so that it wakes them up and gets them to go, oh, I get it. We're allowed to laugh and clap together. We're even though we're strangers, because they're all strangers. You have to remember that everybody in a brand new crowd doesn't know each other for the most part, unless it's a real small town. So even then, we haven't sat next to each other, So it can be weird. So begin to, like, there are 5 sections of a room, right? There's stage left, stage right, there's right up front, there's the middle, and then there's everyone that's in the back. And so you have to look at and acknowledge all of them and get them all working in conjunction together and make sure they can all hear you. So that's a lot of work to do, but that's what you're doing as an opener and as an MC, is you're getting that machine to start running.
I did this last week in my presentation for my company. We hold an event called Pies and Charts, where we look at pie charts, right? But we also have a bunch of really good pies. Well, I said, who's here for the pies? Who's here for the charts?
That's good. It's perfect. Exactly.
It was
Silly, but
silly.
it's perfect. It gets that first laugh. How did it go?
You got a good first laugh, and then but more importantly, got the energy up. And this is a basement of a church, so the terrible acoustics, high ceiling, just echoey. But it did get and I was the first presenter, so that's just a skill I learned though from doing stand up in the last several months and from learning from you that I would never have done last year.
Yeah, it might not have occurred to you. And that's the thing, is like something like that. That's a really funny, like you're like Larry David, Jerry Seinfeld, the thing, like something very basic, you're turning into something big. Who's here for the pie? Who's here for the charts? And now you've taken something minimal and making it applause worthy. So that was good.
That's why you always hear people say, like, give it up for the wait staff, give it up for the host bar.
Right. And that could be, you take that too far, like too many give it up fors, and people get, like, well, I'm not your applause, bitch. Why are you making me, like have the clap for everyone? I used to make fun of that. I used to, when I go up, I was like, give it up for the wait staff, give it up for the other comics you've seen, give it up for the bar, the club owner who's invested his money so that we can all be here together, give it up for the tables and chairs that are allowing you to sit, and if you weren't for the tables and chairs, you'd be on the floor holding your drinks and apps, and give it up for, and then I would just start giving up for the most, for everything. And then by the end it would just be, just give up, everybody give up, it's not worth it anymore. Oh, sorry, we're back. So it's just like a kind of a meta, making fun of the fact that we're giving it up so many times.
Where's the sweet spot? 2 or 3 give it ups, or just be clever with your give it ups. Get applause for something.
Yeah, sneak those in, and get them, learn some of the names of the wait staff, and then you can put them, like give it up for Mary. She's driving a Toyota Tercel, and we need to fill up her tank tonight. So just whatever, just anything that has fun with the fact that you're there, and you're now working together as a group. And that's another thing you can begin to unify the crowd with, is local references. That's number 6 on the list. Is it really pays if you get into your gig early, or are willing to go out during the day. If you're there for the week, you begin to learn some things about the local area. Like, ask the locals, like, which highway is the busiest, which buildings or bridge or structure is the most popular, or like which are the most hated, and then you bring those up whenever you start talking with the crowd. And sometimes just the mentioning of, about like I-75 trying to go south at 4:30, whatever, like something very specific for that group. You can't use that all the time, but it's for that particular evening. You can begin to, unlike the SO sign where the tiger is, whatever local billboard is in front of everybody's view or whatever. And you just figure out what a lot of those things are. And you incorporate those in some of your bits, or you incorporate them in some of your announcements, and people appreciate that. And it gets them like, oh, whoa, this guy's here and he sees us and he's, she is uniting us.
Can you give us specific examples from your career?
When I would go to Wiley's in Dayton, there would definitely be it's called the Oregon District. The Oregon District is a series of bars, and there'd always be a lot of local fights there. There was a lot of food vendors that were out there. So I would always talk about, getting a weenie after the show, or, getting a weenie and then, it's some fisticuffs, let's do it right. But yeah, there's ways that you always just pull out the local, sports teams that are local. There's companies that work nearby that everybody has a job at or whatever. So you just do a lot of research in that, and you start to incorporate those things into your bits. And those are the things that those are just little extras that you can do to begin to have a lot of things in your utility belt when you go up there cold. Like you might not use all of them, but they're there. And then if you begin to incorporate them, it just breaks the ice. It just really helps. And same with current events. If anything's happening that night, like right now, the Final Four is happening. So any mention of the Final Four, we're all kind of thinking about that anyways. If the Super Bowl is about to happen, or if the NBA is just kicking off, or it's spring training and the local baseball team is about to get back on the field, you can do a little research. How did the team do last year? What are they about to do now? Who are the star players? Who's the coach? If you have a bit on sports already, then just use the local sports team to parachute into that bit. And that's fancier sort of work. Like you have to be more experienced to be able to do those kinds of things. But that's what you're aiming towards.
I'm curious, but like the natural law, it seems like 70 minutes in, everyone needs to either go to the bathroom, refill their drink, stretch, check their phone. Is there a natural, is there a word for that in the comedy world? Like the law that even if it's a good show, you're still going to get a little bit dip in energy, maybe an hour in.
Well, that's the job. Another job of the opener or MC is you give them that permission to have that lull in between sets. Like you're the sacrificial lamb that allows that lull to happen while you're there, and you're not bothered by it. If you're in middle act or a headliner, that's bothersome. The headliner has the natural drop into the checks moment. That's a lull that's just built into every show that doesn't drop checks afterwards. And that you work out material for that moment. Like you figure out how to do that, and then you piece the rest of your set after the bills are paid accordingly, and then you rebuild what you lost because of that moment. And some guys just float right over it. Some people work with that check drop. But as far as the first, going up to that cold crowd, your job is to literally get them aware that this is how it's going to go. And so however you can do that, there's a lot of tricks of the trade. That's the other thing, is watch other MCs work. Like just go and watch the show. Watch what like figure out what you like about what they did and what didn't feel good. What it's about is a lot of it's about what makes you feel good as a crowd. Did you make me feel like an idiot for showing up, or do you make me feel like I made a good choice? Did you make me feel like I'm about to get my money's worth, or did you make me feel like, oh my God, this is a waste of my time and money?
But I always go back to professional wrestling. When you're booking a professional wrestling show, let's say you have a 2 hour professional wrestling, and the biggest match of the evening is the last 20 minutes. But that match before the last 20 minutes is the popcorn match. That's when they throw their typically weakest, younger wrestlers out there, because everyone goes to the bathroom, refills their popcorn to to get saddled for like the headline match. Is there an equivalent in a 2 hour comedy show or a 2 hour open mic? Is there like a sacrificial popcorn a popcorn
I
comic?
mean, the opener and the middle act and the headliner are all equally valuable in their own sense. The opener is the newer comedian that sets up sort of how the show's going to go. The middle act is the more experienced comedian that wants to be a headliner but isn't quite ready yet. So he's where she is showing you that there's a bigger picture to the show. It's not just about jokes; it's about concepts, and it's about a personality. And then the headliner has all that down. The headliner is there while you're there. It's like, oh, I like this personality and I like their lens. I want that to happen. And so by that time, that's the job of the first one or two or three comedians, is to get the show ready for that headliner. That's what we have to remember. Until you're the headliner, until you're the one who's bringing in the crowd, your job is to set the crowd up for that person. So if that person's really clean, be really clean for that person. If that person's really dirty, be really clean so that person, when they're dirty, is shocking for the crowd. If that person is really high energy, don't go out there and try to be real high energy and force them to try to top that. Go out there and give them lead them in a different way. So it's a real it's really dependent on who you're working with.
When you were headlining shows, would you give advice to the first two or first three what you want? Be clean, be don't clean, don't do
No,
crowd interaction, do crowd interaction.
no, some guys do. I never did. I was always like, whatever you do, I'll follow it. The
Okay.
worst case scenario, I'll call you out. I go, but you got to realize, I never said this, but they learned very quickly if they did something dumb, I wouldn't let it go unnoticed. But I would have fun with it. I would never I would never be angry. It was that my shows weren't angry. My shows were silly. So if I got angry, my show's done. If I'm frustrated or pissed off, like not now, my bed trying to seduce me just doesn't work. And so, or like my alarm clock being mad at me in the morning, now it sounds like a real jerk. And now you're kind of scared and you're like, I think this guy I hope he's not holding a weapon, because I think he might be angry enough to shoot us. And that's another thing that you can do as an opener. You can begin in between the acts, is you have announcements that the club always needs you to make. It's upcoming shows, special events, it's specials that are for sale that night. It's other calendar moments that they're trying to advertise. They'll give you a list of announcements that they want you to make. So you spread those out throughout the course of the show. And then as you get better as an MC, you begin to realize that, I can make these announcements funny. I can, like if I'm pointing out the direction to where the bathrooms are, I can make a joke about the fact that there's a TV hanging up right below there. So, watch your head, so that you're not going to the bathroom to stop the bleeding or whatever. There's ways to make people laugh when you're talking about what drinks are, like if it's tequila, you got a whole range of barf jokes that you can start doing. And or like I think I mentioned this on another podcast. Tom Rhodes used to get people to applaud and tip more at the end of the show. We'd say, one of these waitresses is having a baby. I've made up my mind. And then he would do that every show, but it was a new crowd, so they would laugh. And even if you already heard it, you would laugh because it's a funny line, and it's funny to watch how the crowd reacts to it at that time, who hadn't heard it yet. And that's the number 9 is there's ways to do quick crowd work. You never, hey, where are you from? What do you do for a living? It's not that kind of crowd work, although it can be a little bit of that. A lot of times when you're the MC, you're the first one to see what the group looks like. So you can begin to say like, well, this looks like a young crowd. This looks like a healthy crowd. Whoa, this crowd looks like they just got off of work. Whoa, you guys are all a little bit sleepy tonight, huh? Well, let's wake you up. Or you guys are a little bit coked up. It looks like, let's bring it down a little bit. Or, you can begin to like, whoa, this woman brought a purse that's looks like she might be packing for a camping trip. Let's go through this a little bit and see what she's got. I'm just kidding, but you begin to notice the things, and what you can do is you can begin to set the other comedians up with the things that you notice. You can point them out and do a couple of quick jokes with them, but then now they can all do callbacks to that. So if they're smart, they can go, oh, we've all seen the woman with the big purse. Now 3 comics in, I can do a big purse joke and look down at Julie or whatever we established that was. So you're also, that's as an MC, sometimes when you do quick crowd work, you're setting up the other comedians to do callbacks to those things that you've noticed.
You're like hanging some hooks up there for you to hang a hat on, or okay, that's clever.
Chekhov's gun, like I'm pointing it out on the cabinet there so that you can shoot it later.
What if the comic ahead of you bombs? And you're like in a hole. They call it like there's no momentum in the room. How do you get out of that?
You hold your nose. You go, whoa, that was awful. No. And that's the thing is everybody has a bad night, and you'll have a bad night. I'll have a bad night, and your bad night is different than my bad night because we're all at different levels. But I've seen really good headliners have a bad night, but people still thought it was a good show. But if someone bombs right before you, like that's the job of the MC, to go in between the guy who bombed or the girl who bombed and then to do material, like do what that person failed to be able to do, which is train the crowd with premise, setup, punchline. Here's how it looks when it works. So then it's better to do something less scattered, do something more direct and specific, because the crowd needs some sugar after they just ate that awful medicine. To me, that's the job of the MC.
As a veteran comic, do you have like 2 or 3 minutes of your that you know are good quick laughs that like a retraining set of 2 minutes? Do you have, is that?
Oh yeah, yeah. You just have like I'll have I have a whole bunch of those. Like you just do one of your bits. You just do one of your bits that typically works well, and you just figure out what those are, and then you just go, because then what you do is you watch the person bomb, and you're like going, okay, I got to go back up there and bring up the headliner. But before I do that, I got to announce the drink special. I got to give people a moment to pee, and I've got to basically heal the wounds of this crowd who just suffered for 20 minutes and didn't laugh that much. So you take that on and you do that, and then you are that buffer between the guy or girl who bombed and that headliner, and so you take it on the chin, and you go, okay, I'm going to, whatever I do, I'm going to bring that energy back up. And the better you're able to do that, the more you'll work as an MC, because the club owners notice that, and the other comedians notice that. A good headliner goes, "Dude, you just took that crowd from a real deep place, a dark place, and you brought them back for me. Thank you." And they'll thank you for that, because they'll know what you just did, and they'll know that why you did it.
Because otherwise they're wasting their first 10 of their set, getting the momentum back to where it was, right?
That's what you do sometimes
What's
as a headliner. You spend that first 10 minutes repairing all the ill will that was built by somebody who wasn't prepared to do that spot. And usually it's not because they're not good. They might just be having an off night. They might be in a bad mood, or the crowd might not have taken to them, or they might have opened with something that they shouldn't have opened with, and then it ruined the rest of their set, and nobody was ever going to buy into what they were doing anyways. That happens all the time. Like you said, you do a Trump bit or a Biden bit, and the crowd, you realize, oh boy, I'm on the other side of the aisle here. And then, but you can still recover from that. You can make fun of the fact that happened, and that's true, and then that wins them back. But sometimes you can't. It's really hard to get them back, and that's the job of the MC. And that's the final piece of advice I had. Number 10 was, you have a plan. It doesn't really matter what the plan is, but have one. Know what your announcements are, and have some fun with those. Know what your job is, and be realistic about what you're supposed to do, and why you're supposed to do it. Know the room that you're in, and the city you're in, and the town you're in, so that you can depend on your knowledge of that to plug into your bits, and look at them clearly, and speak confidently, and get them to work together as a group with applause, and all those things together will at least get them from wherever they started to be the next level up. And remember, if they start really at a low level, you're just trying to get them to that next higher level. You can't get them from a 1 to a 9, but you can get them from a 1 to a 3. If they're at a 3, you're not going to get them to a 9, but you can get them to a 4 or a 5. And that's your job, is to figure out where they're at and have a plan to get them that 1 or 2 steps better, so that next comedian doesn't have to do that to start their show.
When you were describing about how you teach a crowd to get into the set up punchline laugh, is that different than, say, getting the energy up in the room? Like, I guess if you have a football crowd or a basketball crowd, the energy is up in the room, but they're not in comedy rhythm.
It's like, how we combine heightening devices, and there's like, you can use sarcasm when you cut back to, and then you use funny specifics while you're doing that, and then all those together. It's the same with this. You're doing all of it together. You're showing a rhythm with your material while you're picking material that heightens them energy wise, and you're appealing to the local crowd while you're also appealing to the male female ratio that's in the crowd, or whatever you notice, the age of the crowd. If it's a 6 p.m. show and it's all older people who are eating dinner, it's different energy than a 9 o'clock show of young couples that are all ready to go out and party after this. So you have to be able to assess all of those things, raise that energy, but do it with your material and with your announcements. And when you can begin to blend all those things together, you'll be a really valuable MC, because none of that's easy. All of that is developed skills. And when you do it really well, it looks so easy. It looks like you're just up there having a blast. And those are the best MCs. And when you can watch them work, Chicago is great at that. Chicago has some they use a lot of their headliners. Mike Preston goes up there and does that. But they have a bunch of guys that do that in a rotation, and they're just seasoned pros. So they have all these tools in their comedy utility belt that they can rely on, and they don't use them all at once, but they have them there at their disposal.
Can it go the other way? You have too rowdy of a crowd. Do you need to dampen down and retrain them to premise, setup, punchline, laugh?
Yeah, that's tough. I remember in Chicago there was a club called the Funny Firm, and the Funny Firm would have for a while they or what did they turn into? They turned it into a new club, and they called it the Fallout. And they called it the Fallout because the only people they booked were comedians that had a fallout in their schedule. And they had two floors. They had two shows going on simultaneously, and they attracted people to get in there with a dinner, a free dinner, and it was basically big bins of ziti and garlic bread. So there's these crowds that are just pumped up on ziti and garlic bread, and you're running from floor to floor entertaining them. There's two separate crowds, and so it got crazy. And the problem with when you offer people free entrance to a show and hope to make money off of drinks is they don't value the show anymore. If you spent $50 to go see a show, you're like, I want to enjoy this show. If you get in for free and you're drunk, you're like, who cares? Woo! And there's that attitude. So yeah, so that's the opposite of a cold crowd. That's a crowd that's way too warm, and you're having to figure out how to train them into being a good crowd with comedy. And so you do that by just getting a really good bit, a couple good bits, and you just deliver it, and you do it relentlessly. You don't let their lack of attention or lack of quiet disturb you. And it's like if they're good enough bits, people will start to laugh. And when some people start to laugh, everyone else is like, wait, what? They don't want to miss out on it. So then they get pulled in. And I've watched guys and girls get up there and just pull that crowd in, and best crowd of the night because they're already got that energy, but now it's focused. And then I've also watched some of those crowds go nuts, and it goes awful to the point where one time at the Fallout, I had people tossing pennies at me because the first guy did it and I made a funny joke out of it. And then it started to get where I got smacked in the head with some pennies. I'm like, now you're aiming at me. This is bullshit. So I left the stage. But so it's very easy to go either way for sure.
It sounds like there's an opportunity though. If you look at every crowd as an opportunity, as long as you know how to kind of corral it.
Every one of them is like a unique beast. And that's the other thing that a lot of comedians will tell you is every crowd has its own personality. It develops its own sort of group thing. And it's really bizarre when you do enough shows, you begin to like sense what this crowd is. You're like, oh, this is a thoughtful crowd. Oh, this is an energetic and angry crowd. Oh, this is a sit back and go kind of a crowd. Oh, this is an old crowd, so they don't put up with any curse words or anything filthy. Oh, this is a filthy crowd. That's all they want. Let's see if we can give them something different, so we're not all being like easy jokes. And you begin to really have to assess what each crowd is like, and they honestly they get like a group thing together. It's really bizarre, and you'll notice it as you do more and more shows. You'll say, whoa, I start to see these patterns, and it's pretty cool because then you can adjust how you're going to approach each one of those patterns. You have a set of tools that works for each one.
That seems easier for a veteran that has 3 hours of material in their head. What if you are the person like me that I have a good 10 and I only have 10? And I'm not sure if I maybe have 9.5 and I'm hoping I can get to 10 and I'm on this show for the first time. I don't have any other material. And I have a dead, and the guy ahead of me bombs. Or the guy ahead of me punches the waitress and there was like a,
What a
terrible
horrible show this is. The waitress punching is happening. Oh, someone let this crowd get way out of hand if the waitress gets punched. Yeah, well, I mean, that then you begin to wonder why did you take that gig? Like you might not be ready for that gig yet. If you're put in a position where you don't have the material and you don't have the tools to handle that situation, you either learn very quickly and get it done, or you say you watch the tape of that show and go, whoa, I didn't handle that well at all. I need to have a better approach when that happens. And then the next time that happens, if you didn't make, that's why you have to have a plan, so that if that happens, I know now I have a plan for when there's waitress punching happening. I know what to do. I know there's a protocol to get down. I know you just being funny. We never hit our waitresses. Waitresses are, as a comedian, your waitresses are the most valuable asset you have out there. They can be loud or quiet if they want to be while you're on stage. They can get people to order more drinks or less drinks and enjoy you or not enjoy you. They can talk you up before the show even starts, or they can talk you down, or by not talking about you at all. And the wait staff is a very valuable. Like if they're happy, then the club's happy, and but they're also some of your biggest fans. Like if you're a good comedian and they make money while you're there in town, and you're fun and you hang out after the shows and you go dancing or drinking or go play poker with them or whatever the club does, like they'll tell the owner to bring you back. Like they'll be your best advocate. So it's really important to get in good with the wait staff. Not to mention they've worked their asses off.
Do you have like bits where you know that will work only if you have momentum in the room? Like, do you have bits that are like more cerebral or maybe a little bit dirtier that you can't
Me?
start
I
with?
don't have any cerebral jokes. Are you kidding? My jokes start at the shoulders and ends at the cock. No, that yeah, I mean, you definitely like have different versions of your set, but I think like I think it's a mistake to try to adjust your comedy too much to the crowd. I think that if you know your comedy lens and if you have a style of how you perform your comedy, you just need to do what you do, because that's why you got hired. You got hired because the owner or the booker liked what you did.
So, Mike, give us a recap. Like, what are the quick return on investments when you're trying to get a quiet crowd back into it?
Well, first, the when you're trying to get a quiet crowd back into it, the in a nutshell, you have to just sort of assess what type of quiet crowd you have, right? You just have to get an idea of, like, are they just new? Has something weird happened? Are they tense? Are they, and then have a plan, and your plan has to include a bunch of tools and tactics that you use, which is the confidently walking, confidently speaking, making eye contact so you acknowledge them, getting applause breaks so that you can begin to have them work as a unit, and then acknowledging all the different parts of the room, both sides, the back, the middle, the front, and make sure everyone can see and hear you and feels heard. Making local references and current event jokes and funny announcements really help tie in the local scene and the fact that you're doing a show for these particular people. And then talking to them a little bit in between while you're trying to give them the chance to go pee or pay a bill or just get their drinks ordered. And then, like I said, having a plan is the key. If you don't have a plan, then you're just trying to pull it out of your butt while you're in the moment. And if you're really good, that works. But if you're new, it might not. So those are my recommendations.